just now, at the very heart of our experience, of present experience, there is an utter simplicity that is so simple that we cannot observe it as an object before us. And we don't need, because we are it. This simplicity is the very ground and essence of our experience, and of every specific experience that arises and passes away, that rises and passes away. And if you know, when we speak about reality, we are actually speaking about experience, in the sense that no aspect whatsoever of what we call reality can appear outside experience. No sound, no color, no thought, they can appear only in experience. So, as far as it concerns us, reality and experience are just two words for the same thing. And the very ground and essence of experience is this simplicity, this unknowable simplicity. And albeit nameless, this simplicity is usually given some names, some key words that aren't used just to mean what is, but just as a hint at it. One of these key words is consciousness or awareness. And when it is used, this word is pointing at the clarity of this simplicity, the clarity that sheds light and allows everything to appear. When we think about awareness or consciousness, we are meaning the clarity of this simplicity. What makes our experiences vivid, alive? But usually there is a problem with these terms like awareness or consciousness, because they are usually understood as a mental subjective function, the function of cognizing, of knowing things. And this is, of course, it would be too reductive, too narrow, this use of the terms in order to mean this simplicity. So when terms like awareness and consciousness are used, they are often confused with what we are conscious of, we are aware of. We are constantly aware of experience. So we are aware, you are aware of my words, of the singing birds, of the colors you see, or the thoughts that are in your mind. Those are called aware or conscious experiences. And the science also studies them, can study them, because there are correlates between the brain activities that you can measure with machines and so on, and the contents of awareness. Thoughts, emotions, perceptions, bodily sensations. But the very fact of being aware as such, that sort of awakeness or aware presence, independently from what we are aware of, cannot be explained by science, because as Shantena was saying this morning also, in order to observe, to study, science needs awareness. So awareness is already there before any attempt to understand reality through science can begin. And so you cannot, science is like us in this room. We can study every detail of the room, but we can never know the shape of the building where this room is inside. So sometimes it's used, the key words awareness or consciousness to mean that clarity of simplicity of being. But there are these problems about misunderstanding, because when we use the word awareness to point at that simplicity, we are pointing at something that is far beyond any cognizing activity of human understanding. Another word, key word, that is used for this simplicity is now, or the present. Since no experience can happen outside the now. You know, the word present comes, etymologically, comes from the Latin pre, that means before or prior to, and esse, that means being. So, it's interesting that even in the word, the present is what is prior to every being that appears. Is the dimension that allows experience to exist. And as such, it's the source that sheds its light of existence to everything, every experience. And as such, this light is shared by everyone of us. The present actually is the only existing real time. We usually think that the present or the now is just a very short ham slide inside a huge sandwich, huge past, huge future, and only this fleeting time that is the present. But actually this is just a construction of mind. Because everything can exist and appear only now, including the memories that we call the past and the thoughts that we call the future. Mystics made it clear that our ordinary idea about time is an idea of a fleeting, of present, sorry, is an idea of a fleeting present. Nunc fluens, that means a now that changes, that a fleeting now. That is the ordinary idea. But the real present for the mystics of our tradition, of Western tradition, is defined as nunc stans. That means a now that never goes away. That is always when? Now, of course. Experiences that appear and disappear are really fleeting experiences. But the light of now is always here to illuminate them. I invite you to do a very simple experiment, relying on your direct experience of now. Please try to find the precise edge, the precise borderline where the past ends and the present begins, or where the present ends and the future begins. Can you find this edge? Wherever we see, we only see the now. This edge, this borderline, is only in our mind and divides three different concepts that we have built. Past, present, and future. But it doesn't divide anything about the now, where even these lines, these mental lines appear and disappear. And if I invite you to another funny experiment, just to struggle as hard as you can, just to get out of the now for half a second. Can you do this? It's impossible because you and now are the same. And so, when there are meditation instructions to live in the present, they are quite futile because we cannot do otherwise anyway. And this now is the same now of 10 minutes ago, the same now of 10 years ago, the same now of 10 million years ago. It never ended. Time is the measure of changing. In this now, we perceive changing experiences. This is the only perception we have, changing things. Then we try to measure this changing, this movement, through time. Time is a measure, because in nature you don't find minutes, hours, years, days. You find changing experiences that appear and disappear. And in order to perceive something changing, there must be a background that doesn't change. That is the present. While we, in our construction, we just have equated the present with the second, and we think that the present just goes away. It's very funny. So, if we see our experience, that is, as I said, the same word for reality, we can see that it has two indivisible, inseparable aspects. Something that changes, the experiences that arise and pass away, and something that doesn't change, the now, the simplicity of being, whatever we want to call it. And it is, they are not separable. Like when you look at a movie in TV, no? The movie is always changing. The screen is always there, doesn't change. But both are not separable, are the same thing. But the difference is that the changing aspect of experience has forms. Every form is limited. A form is a frame. There are forms of sounds, the frequency of the sound. There are forms of color, the frequency of the light. There are many waves that we just through a word or a concept transform in a specific form, and our sensory channel can catch that form. For some example, our eyes can grasp only a narrow part of the electromagnetic spectrum, only some frequencies, and each frequency just is given a name, red, violet, and so on, no? So they appear that when we construct our visual perception as forms, definite forms. We have these patterns that we recognize as forms, and the forms are two main characteristics. That first, they are limited, finite. Second, they change. They appear and disappear. And our mind can only perceive forms, can only perceive what is limited and what appears and disappears. While the background of all, this is that I call this utter simplicity of being, is formless. Even if it appears as all the forms that we see. And so mind cannot perceive it, cannot know it. Or it knows this simplicity through the variety of the forms, the complication, the complexity of forms. Shankara calls this simplicity Brahman, and he says the universe is nothing but Brahman. So people want to perceive Brahman, but we cannot help not perceiving it, because everything we perceive is Brahman as an apparent limited form. And so the forms appear and disappear, but Brahman is always there, like the now, like the screen with the film. The screen is always there. The film appears in the screen and changes. And at the same time, the screen doesn't change. But so our mind our mind cannot perceive the unchangeable side of experience. And because it can only perceive something, an object. And even mind is very tricky, because transforms even itself into something that is the subject, as a separate one in a world of many other objects. And the duality comes about that. And when maybe our mind hears about the miracle of this utter simplicity of being, immediately transforms it into something to reach, into a goal far away that it wants to. And from time to time, we can have an experience of this simplicity. We were speaking about beauty, about peace, about love. We can have an experience that that somehow is permeated by the taste of this simplicity. And sometimes there are also moments when every form disappears, and the mind finds in a state of emptiness. So there is a flavor of simplicity there. The problem is that in that particular experience. In that particular state, meditative states or contemplative states, or spontaneously also, when everything disappears, there still remains the mind, a subject, perceiving a special experience where of the absence of all other experiences. So, you know, it sees a state where there is the absence of experience and mistakes that state for simplicity. It's a mistake because in reality it is still an experience that arises and passes away, and in that experience there is still a subject perceiving as an object the absence of all other objects, and says that is the simplicity, while the simplicity includes both that experience and me, the observing subject. Is not apart from that simplicity, it's just an expression of it. So, a third key word to hint at that simplicity is an important term, the absolute. And it's interesting also the translation of the etymology of this word. It comes from the Latin ab, that means from, and solutus, that means dissolved or free. In the sense that when you can have a handful of salt and keep it imprisoned in your fist, but when the salt is dissolved in water, it is free from every attempt to grasp it, though it is still entirely there. It hasn't lost its essence, but it's free. This is the idea of absolute freedom. And here there are many traps for us, because we identify ourselves exclusively with this body-mind, and we think that this me is separate from the rest of the universe. Even the science says that it's not true. Not only quantum physics, but also system theory says that the universe is just one process. Everything needs all the rest of the universe in order to be. So there are no separation. There are a huge amount. There is a huge amount of differences, but no real separation. But we live as if we were a separate entity, every day having to deal with life, with the problems of outside. We feel limited, we feel incomplete, and especially we don't feel free. And so we are a part of the whole that believes to be separate and that wants to be free. There is a bad news. A part cannot be free, because a part is always conditioned by all the other parts. So as long as a separate part of this universe I am looking for freedom, I won't find it, because the only freedom is, the only free entity is the whole, because there is nothing outside conditioning it. That is why in India, for example, when they describe the actions that we do in our life, those actions can be described in terms of cause and effect. Conditioning something that conditions some other thing. We are pushed by something and we push other things. But how to describe the movement of the whole? They can call it Shiva, they can call it the Brahman or whatever. How is the movement of the whole? And the way they describe it is saying that it is a dance or a play. Because if you notice, when we are playing, if it's not our job, when we are playing, singing, or dancing, we do not those movements in order to arrive from the point A to the point B, because it's important to arrive to the point B, and that is the aim. When I dance, the aim is not to arrive to the point B, it's just to enjoy the movement since the beginning, since the point A. And as Alan Watts used to say, it would be really sad to sing a song with the aim to arrive as soon as possible to the end. He says otherwise musicians would compose only finals, and people would go to the concert and say in the orchestra, "Zanza," and finished. You know, it's not that. So the movement of the universe is rather a dance. A dance is a play without an external aim, goal to reach. So a part can never be free as long as it sees itself as a separate part. But it is possible to see that the whole has no parts, has an infinite diversity of expressions, all different but not separate. But as long as we think that we are a part, a separate part, and we want to be free, there will be a misunderstanding. We will mistake free for apart. The only way to be free, we think, since we are a part that is conditioned by other parts, is to isolate us as we can from everything else, in order not to have the influence of what is outside. And this is an impossible task, of course, since everything is connected. And so, what happens is that we divide reality into separate domains. There is the absolute, that is the paradise. Imagine as a place of perpetual ecstasy, where everything will be good and no problems. That is, and we will try to reach that paradise, escaping the hell of our trivial everyday life. And this is really to go against reality, really impossible to do that. Unexpectedly, from time to time, the glowing beauty of this utter simplicity shines through our life for a while. And we have those kind of experiences I was describing before. And when the mind has one of those experiences, it says, wow, I finally got the point. It doesn't realize that that experience, as all the others, comes and go. And the mind says, I must stabilize that experience, maybe through some practice. And again, the idea of having to reach the paradise goes on. And And sometimes, I don't know if you happen to see spiritual circles, there is always this question, how to reconcile the absolute with everyday life, with trivial everyday life? How to reconcile them? It's an impossible task because they are just the same thing. You know, how to reconcile the film and the screen? How to reconcile the waves and the sea? How to reconcile the ascent and the descent if they are just two different names for the same slope? There is no need to do that. So whenever we try to abandon our trivial everyday life in order to reach the paradise of the absolute, we are involved in an impossible task, and we are resisting the present. If now there is anger, if now there is pain, if now there is anxiety or fear, all of them are the actual expression of the simplicity of now, in this moment. To resist them is tantamount to the impossible task to escape, to evade the present. That is not a solution. But even resisting the present and trying to escape it is a perfect expression of this simplicity. Is what exists, how the absolute is now. So the absolute is not a medicine for pain. When there is pain, the absolute is the pain. There is a nice story, maybe some of you knows it, but I like to tell. There was a man who had a strong faith in God. And one day, a flood became to invade his where he lived. And so gradually the water was rising up and up. And so he went to the first floor of his house. And after a while, a boat full of people passed by, and the man of the boat said, "Please come with us, we are just going to a safe place." But the man said, No, I am confident that God will save me. So, thank you, I stay. And the water was rising up, and he went to the second floor. And after a while, a dinghy is there. I didn't know this word. I had to. Dinghy came with a man, rowing man, and he said, "Please, I am the last one with a boat. So, please come with me and save your life." No, it would be a sense of not confidence to God. So my faith will save me. And so he goes. And the water goes up, and he goes to the roof of the house. And when he was there, a helicopter came, and they threw down a rope ladder and said, "We are the last ones. I'm just rescuing the last people. So please, this is your last chance to save your life." He says, No, I am faith in God. Thank you. And so the helicopter goes, and the water rises, and at last he dies, drowned in the water. Of course, he goes to the paradise. This is undubitable because of his face. But he was a little bit upset because he felt somehow betrayed by God. So when he meets God, says, "Dear God, I had so much faith in you. I was confident that you would have saved my life. Why didn't you do?" And he says, I sent you a boat, a dinghy, an helicopter. What do you want more? You know. So this story tells us that the separate ego, the separate, has nothing to gain from the absolute. And really nothing to. As much to fear about it, because when the absolute is recognized, the separate ego evaporates, dissolves. So it has nothing to gain, really. And when the separate ego appears with this resistance, even that is just an expression of the absolute. Therefore, the absolute cannot be reached, because it is always here and now, in the form of our breath, our heart beating, the sounds, the hearing, the thoughts, the memories, and also the appearance of the illusory idea of a separate ego, and even appears as our attempt to reach what is already here. This is the dance. And when this non-separation is recognized by no one, a deep peace permeates the life. And then you can fall in love with life in all its expressions, painful or pleasurable. Because when you have fallen in love with someone, you accept everything, even if it behaves in a ugly, you know. But if you love, you can't help to love. And as I said, love dissolves the separation between the lover and the beloved, until nothing remains but a wildly free aliveness that shines as the utter simplicity of being. When you can recognize, or it can happen that there is a recognition that you are it. But when you don't recognize it, you are it anyway. Thank you.
So this question may be a bit tedious because it's formalistic. But so what if you are saying the mind has various experiences, the mind is limited, therefore you cannot experience the absolute, you can only experience things down the narrow channels. Excuse me. If therefore you have experiences of, pain, fear, anger, whatever, you also have an experience when you meditate, say, or have a religious experience or a spiritual experience, which may be an experience of the absence of certain other things, but is nonetheless an experience.
Yes.
Is therefore any reason to give it a kind of exalted status? Say, this experience takes me closer to something which is true, but the others don't. Why? I mean, because a lot of people would say that there's a kind of primacy to this experience, but is there any good reason for saying so?
We cannot be closer to what we are. This is the short answer. Independently from any kind of experience you have, the highest as the lowest, you cannot be apart from what you already are. So there is some of you has heard about what is the Dzogchen. It's a non-dualist tradition in Buddhism, in Tibetan Buddhism. And there is a very good, very interesting text of a Dzogchen master that says that the wave cannot go nearer or farther from the sea. Not even 1 centimeter can be closer to the sea or distant from the sea, because it is the sea, it is an activity of the sea. So we cannot really go closer or have a path of progressive in time, a progressive path in time in order to reach something that is already here. And so it's not important which kind of experience we have from this point of view. In our personal life, there are some activities like meditation, like that we like to do. So we do, and we have also some results. If you want to reach some goals from the perspective of our ego, you can do something in order to reach. For example, you can do some kind of meditation in order to reach states of deep peace that usually we don't experiment in our everyday consciousness. And they are quite important for us. They are very, very pleasurable, not only, but they purify our mental activities. We can think better, we can relate better. So, for example, to practice in order to reach some peace of mind, deep, beyond the normal peace, you can fall really in states of silence that becomes deeper and deeper. It's quite interesting that. But of course, you must also be aware that if this also Ramana Maharshi was repeating it, every new state that was not before, and then you can build and reach, will end, will have an end. Everything that you can do can be undone, and sooner or later it will. Everything you build or you accumulate, it will exhaust itself because of the nature of what you built or what you accumulate. So every new state that you try to reach, however pleasurable and worthwhile is to reach, because in our life we have to do something, no? So it's better to do something that we like, okay? But everything that we can reach, if you have meditated one life in samadhi and profound states, if you have a cancer at the bones, that peace goes away. And it is a great teaching, that even that peace, since it is conditioned, go away. Only the unconditioned, only what is not born will not die. And so, as Nisargadatta said, the question is, instead of looking for what you haven't, see what is always with you. That is also simpler. There was another thing that I wanted to say. Yes, meditation can be a good tool to reach not only the peace of mind, there are many other aims, goals. For example, a good integration body and mind, a good relationship, a better relationship with others or with the situation in life. So meditation is a treasure from this point of view, and the idea is that if you practice it, you will reach these goals. That is quite good. The problem comes when you transform what is already here into a goal to reach with meditation. When you think that you have to reach God because it's not already here. And so you, meditating, you build this trap that the more you practice to reach awakening or whatever, the completeness, the less chance you have to realize that it's already with you. Because you convince yourself, if you are looking for, it's because you don't have yet, of course. Otherwise you don't look, don't seek. I say, seeking itself is the only hindrance to realize that we are what we are seeking. And so, sometimes I use the metaphor of trying to see the darkness with a lamp that is turned on. And you see, you are looking for the darkness and say, I won't turn off the lamp until I find the darkness. And as I usually say, fortunately for us, sooner or later, the batteries just finish by themselves. And okay, this is the darkness. That is what happens. No, it is all spontaneous. Even our conviction, our idea that we lack something, even our idea to be in a separate I, even our seeking what is already here, are the perfect expression of what we are. They are not problems. They are free expressions. But as they begin, they will finish like the batteries. And sometimes since all this involves a completeness deep down, which is timeless. So no path can Krishnamurti said, the truth is a pathless land. Because it is timeless. When I say already here, I don't say something in time. I mean something where even time just unfolds. So you cannot reach it in any way because you are it already. So this it's really not so important that I realize this completeness, whether I realize it or not. Because anyway, it's here. Once, I don't remember if it was Sylvester. Sylvester went here last year. I don't know if I read from a book of him or not, but somewhere I read this sentence that awakening is when the idea of being a separate ego dissolves. But at the end of our life, when we die, in any case, it will dissolve. So why are we so pushed to reach this awakening in life? And the answer is because it is more chic, more